Chapter 1833, Soul Return to Ether. Song Era 106,742. The Arcs have finally ushered in the end of their civilization. Even though they combine the history of the lost civilization they acquired over the years and chose a different path, in the end this transition from a carbon-based civilization to a silicon-based civilization ended in failure. In the Tsang Empire, people chose to transform their bodies into mechanical life forms, retaining only their own brains, in an attempt to achieve immortality. Plato's, one of the four marshals of the emperor, refused to undergo full body modification. He firmly believed that the Tsang era would not end this way, and that full body modification would lead to the loss of humanity and the complete degradation of humans into mechanical puppets. Judgment Day arrived. The ancient legend of a catastrophe powerful enough to destroy an entire civilization did not come to pass. The humans of the Tsang era cheered, believing that they had found the right solution and escaped the end of the world. But as time passed once more, the arcs gradually began to disappear from the land. It turned out that the vast majority of arcs, in order to avoid the end of the world, transformed themselves into mechanical life forms, and they slowly began to lose their humanity. Their mechanical bodies made it difficult to even die, so their lives became incredibly long. In their mechanical bodies, they could no longer feel the beauty of food, the pleasure of mating, or the desire to reproduce. They can live longer and longer, and in theory they can live forever. In the original plan, they will be able to escape destruction, and even if they go into space or the deep sea, this body is enough to allow them to flourish again. But gradually, they began to forget the meaning of their lives. They no longer communicate or act, and time seems to have stopped forever. Their lives have lost their meaning because they have no goals to reproduce, struggle, or communicate. Their mechanical bodies did not worry about keeping warm, and their powerful central computers made them extremely rational. When living things start to think about the meaning of their existence, that is the beginning of their destruction. Because the existence of living things in this world does not have any meaning. Everything that is created will disappear with time, loved ones will deteriorate and leave. Without material needs, life begins to be boring. They have locked themselves in a prison called eternal life. Thus, the civilization of the Tsang era began to self-destruct. A small number of Tsang era humans who did not choose to become completely mechanized survived. Most of humanity became completely mechanized and then perished. Plato's had lived in solitude for a long time, watching as one by one his former companions died around him. He became lonely. And it was on the day that his younger brother Chernobyl also died that this deep sense of loneliness completely overwhelmed him. Chernobyl died peacefully. At this time, Chernobyl had almost completely transformed into a mechanical life form, with only a portion of his brain remaining. He lay in bed, sending out signals that he did not want to live in this world without hope, so the advanced civilization and technology directly sent him away. He died peacefully, without any pain. Plato's, however, almost fell into despair, because his only relative in the world had died. The dead cannot be resurrected, and he knew that the substance symbolizing the most precious existence of living things would completely disappear with the death of the flesh. This may be precisely the reason why their Tsang era civilization has come to this day. Plato's copied Chernobyl memories and placed him in the source of one of Chernobyl favorite mechanical life partner. In this way, Chernobyl lived on in his side. "Brother, you must live happily." Chernobyl final words drifted into the void, seemingly carried away by the wind. Plato's did not despair at his death. His last thought, in the moments before he died, was, "It's finally over. Chernobyl, I've returned for you. I've waited so long for this moment. May you wait for me in that shining ocean." After confirming that it was safe, Zhang Yi went over to check out their remains. However, when he opened Chernobyl's head, he was shocked to discover that inside this body, there was no spirit of sacrifice, or the origin of carbon-based life forms. There was only a control center resembling a computer, created by sophisticated machinery. Chernobyl was not a cyborg, he was a very pure machine. He is just a guardian mechanical life form of the demon god Yi? Zhang Yi said indifferently with his hands hanging down. Even at this moment, he did not relax in the slightest. He was just a little puzzled, because from the way Carragher and Plato's behaved towards each other, it was not a simple relationship between a guarding machine and its master. It seemed that they were family. Family in mechanical civilization? Zhang Yi frowned slightly, a little hard to understand. Perhaps something had happened between them. But that was no longer something Zhang Yi cared about. Mirana's eyes fell on Zhang Yi's hands, which were hanging by his side, and he felt a little more admiration for Zhang Yi. These hands can kill again at any time. He never fights while he's fighting, and even when victory is certain, he'll guard against any possible accidents. It's a stupid idea to try to sneak up on him while he's relaxed. At times like these, Zhang Yi is even more calm and careful than when he's fighting. It doesn't seem like it, because where would a protective mechanical life form be if it stayed so far away while its master was fighting? Yang Xinxin said, tilting her head. They give the impression of being more like family. Family. Zhang Yi was puzzled. Androids and mechanical life forms would be family? He had no idea what kind of relationship these two had. He just knew that this battle was over and that many lives could be spared. Zhang Yi stored the two remaining bodies in his own dimensional space, ignoring Mirana's somewhat complicated expression, and went to check if Alexei was alive first. Alexei and Jussenberg had both sustained serious injuries, but it was clear that Carragher had not intended to kill them when he fought them before, so neither would die. As long as they would not die, the physical injuries they sustained could be cured very easily nowadays. Alexei, whose eyes were aglow with excitement upon seeing Zhang Yi, said sincerely to him, "I never thought that I would once again be indebted to you." "Thank you, Chaos." Zhang Yi gave a faint smile. "We are friends, aren't we? When I heard that you were in trouble, I didn't even think about it, and I came to save you as soon as possible. Fortunately, you are fine now." Zhang Yi quickly cleaned up the battlefield, and then hurriedly led everyone to leave the place. The demon god Yi Platos died in battle, and Zhang Yi felt a vague sense of unease. He always felt that something was about to happen. Because so far, he could not understand many of the actions of mechanical civilization. He felt that there must be some kind of conspiracy behind this matter. With Zhang Yi there, the battlefield was quickly cleared. The enormous dimensional gates unfolded one after the other in the sky and then collected all the broken mechanical life forms within. Up to this point, the number of mechanical life forms Zhang Yi has obtained is close to 6 digits. Liu Karen has long since thoroughly researched the manufacturing process of these mechanical life forms, and Zhang Yi plans to take them back to Tianhai City afterwards, where they will be repaired and assembled to form his own mechanical legion. Of course, supplying so many mechanical life forms will inevitably require a lot of resources, especially the materials that are definitely needed to repair the mechanical life forms and the energy to power them, which will all be a huge expense. It will be difficult for Zhang Yi to maintain 100,000 mechanical life forms, but it will be fine to get a few thousand. As for the remaining broken bodies, the materials can be disassembled and used to build the Tianhai fortress in the future. Zhang Yi is a person who knows how to live, and he is unwilling to waste anything. Chernobyl. The moment Platos died in battle, the six-winged sovereign and Loridek arrived at that forbidden place. After more than half a century, this place finally had visitors again. The sky was a gloomy black and gray, and everything around exuded a frightening stillness. The air was filled with powerful radiation, a terrifying energy that was enough to cause major genetic mutations in living things. Loridek slowly sheathed the large black sword in his hand. Behind him, the bodies of a dozen rodents, larger than elephants, lay in a pool of blood. After the end of the world, the creatures that had undergone catastrophic changes in this area had become even more terrifying, but in front of Loridek, they were just some annoying mice. "Platos is dead," said the six-winged sovereign, his face showing no expression, except for a flash of recollection and exclamation in his eyes. Sadness? There was not much of it. They had all lived an incredibly long time, so long that they had grown tired of life. If they had not waited until today to achieve their goal, perhaps these demons around them would have long since ended themselves. Then let us take the hope of them all and continue on. The two entered Chernobyl, surrounded by a large number of engineering troops exploring for something, with the instruments and equipment making a rapid drip-drip sound. This meant that they were getting closer to what they were looking for. Giant mechanical beings, 10 of those super-large construction vehicles, had dug huge holes here, leading straight to the very depths of Chernobyl. The thing that Solomons had done everything in its power to hide had once again come to light. The six-winged sovereign and Loridek had no time to reminisce about Plato's, as they had more important things to do. The two leapt into the abyss, and as they got closer, the feeling of something soul-crushing became more and more apparent. They stopped at a location deep within the caverns, where there was nothing but emptiness. The six-winged sovereign suddenly opened his 3 pairs of pitch-black wings, and the next moment, he drew a strangely shaped sword from his waist. From the ground of Chernobyl, a pillar of black light shot up into the sky, carrying a power that made the soul tremble. A storm spread out from the crypt, sweeping in all directions. The black light shot up into the sky, piercing through layer after layer of clouds, crushing them and even reaching into space. At this moment, if you looked down from space, you could see that the atmosphere had been temporarily shaken open, creating a hole. Above the sky, the polyhedrons that had been there for almost a month suddenly moved. A hazy radiance appeared on their surfaces, and they slowly began to rotate in midair, facing the direction of Chernobyl. The power was so great that it caused the ground around Chernobyl to tremble frantically. The energy storm swept across the land, causing some mountains to crumble and the snow on the ground to blow away, creating a huge impact crater. It got dark in Fremons. Not just Fremons, but most of Europe, and even the sky in the northern part of the Huashu kingdom darkened. Li Changgong of the northwest region walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows and saw the sky in the north was pitch black. He quietly clenched his fists. What happened again? His face was ashen with fear, because although he knew that something extraordinary must have happened in Fremons, his current status and strength both made him afraid to take the risk. When a person has too many things, they inevitably become constrained. In the northeast region, Han Shanzhua, the Luya Dao lord, was drinking beer at home with his shirt off. Seeing this, he also came over and pushed open the window, allowing the cold wind to blow Hu into the house. Seeing the dark sky and the faint energy rays reaching up to the sky, his brow furrowed deeply. What a lot of trouble. Even in the Xinjiang region, the problem was noticed right away. However, no one dared to take any action after receiving a warning from the being beneath the dragon chamber. Zhang Yi had already brought Morana, Alexei, and the others with him and rushed all the way back to Samarin City. In just a few minutes, Zhang Yi had traversed thousands of kilometers, and at the moment, no one in the world could do this as freely as he could. Of course, they could also see the gloomy sky, and when they looked into the distance at the black light that reached up to the sky, they felt a stirring deep in their hearts. What the hell is that thing? Zhang Yi's brows were knitted tightly together, but he didn't have any information about it in his heart. After all, regarding mechanical civilization, they only understood up to the level of the 10 demon gods. The six-winged sovereign had never intervened, and although he had been present when Jupiter of the Roman Temple of God was killed, he had merely stood by and watched. At this time, Prodaja, Vladimir, and Aliyev were already waiting for them in Samarin City. Seeing that the 3 Moranas were alive, the 3 men's tense expressions instantly revealed expressions of extreme surprise. The 3 of them rushed over, grabbed Alexei and Jussenberg by the arm, and shook them vigorously. Of course, Morana and the others did not dare to touch them. It's great to see you all back safe and sound, it's really exciting. The foundation of their power is the Pantheon, which has powerful mutants. If the 3 of Morana had died in battle, their power would have collapsed. Morana's face was not as cold as usual, but she still didn't want to say much. After all, she didn't fight honorably in this battle. She originally thought that it was Fremon's battle for redemption, but in the end, she relied on Zhang Yi's help to win. Morana had already thanked Zhang Yi, so she didn't waste any more time on formalities. She simply took the overcoat from an officer's hand and put it on, then walked coldly forward. This action made many people feel a chill in their hearts after watching it. As the darling of the snowy country, Morana did not need to wear combat fatigues in extreme cold and was not afraid of the cold. This subconscious action showed that she was seriously injured at the moment. However, immediately, people from the medical unit hurried over to treat Morana and the other two. In the mid-21st century, most physical illnesses can be cured, and even advanced cancer can extend the patient's life. The emergence of supernatural doctors made it even more difficult to die. The three Moranas all had serious injuries of varying degrees, injuries that affected their internal organs, but they were also able to heal quickly. Probaja turned his head and looked at Zhang Yi and the others with very complex eyes. He slowly took 2 steps back, removed his hat and placed it in front of him, and bowed deeply to Zhang Yi. "Thank you, Lord Chaos. You have saved Fremons." In the past, although there were some grudges due to disputes over interests, these were not personal grudges. And now Probaja saluted Zhang Yi because of the righteousness of the national level. Of course, he also had a large share of the benefits. Zhang Yi smiled slightly and responded with ease, "We are allies, aren't we? Helping you is the right thing for me to do." Of course, it sounds good to say that now. If Probaja hadn't seen with his own eyes how Zhang Yi haggled over the terms when Probaja had previously asked Zhang Yi for help, Probaja might have really believed him. Of course, Probaja could only smile in return. "By the way, this is according to the agreement we made before. You can have that 10% share." Zhang Yi waved his hand and directly took out about 10% of the mechanical life form remains, which were piled up like a small mountain in the open space next to them. In Probaja's heart, what he wanted most was definitely those 2 demon god mechas. But for the time being, he had no way to ask for them. After thinking for a while, he suddenly smiled and shook his head at Zhang Yi, saying, "Lord Chaos, we cannot accept these things. According to the agreement, it is true that we will receive 10% of the supplies, but you have helped us a lot this time. So these supplies are our way of repaying you, so please accept them back." Zhang Yi's smile grew even wider at the corner of his mouth. Of course he understood what Probaja meant. Both sides of the mechanical life forms have already mastered a lot, and studying the technology of this type of mass production machine no longer makes much sense at this point. At most, they will get some materials. What Probaja wants is the demon god unit, and the unit of an upper-level demon god like Yi is even more rare. Of course, Zhang Yi definitely won't give it to him. But by giving up these supplies, he can make other requests in the future. Zhang Yi shook his head and said, "I have always followed the rules, even with my own brothers. If we agree on 10%, then 10% it is. If you don't accept it, I won't be happy." Seeing that his plan had failed, Probaja's smile became a little awkward on his face, but he could only nod and say, "Okay then." He then said to the officer behind him, "Tell the engineering unit to come here and put these mechanical life forms in the armory." Zhang Yi didn't want to chat anymore and was about to go back when he suddenly reminded Probaja and the others, "Oh yeah, that thing." He pointed his finger at the distant sky, and Probaja and the others looked in the same direction, their expressions becoming solemn. "It should be related to mechanical civilization. This is your territory, so I hope you can investigate properly and find out what really happened there. After all, this is Fremon's territory, and it is not good for satellites from other countries to blatantly conduct reconnaissance during such a sensitive period. At most, some spy satellites may have obtained some information. But for a detailed investigation, only Fremon's own reconnaissance forces can go out. However, this is not something Zhang Yi should worry about." Probaja nodded with a serious expression, "Don't worry, we will." After Zhang Yi and the others returned to their accommodation, they did not feel that this operation was particularly difficult. Plato's and Karagher were indeed very powerful, but the combination of Zhang Yi, Morana, and Yang Xinshin, who had just been promoted to Epsilon, was too strong, and they basically took down the other party without any risk. As for Yang Xinshin's abilities, it was still the same as before, and it was difficult to give a specific judgment on her ability index. This was the case with the abilities of the rules category, which were almost invincible within the rules. Ho Tua's Hell's Guillotine can surpass levels and slash mutants that are much stronger than her if the conditions are met. Yang Xinxin's Fallen Angel Puppet can also control all beings that are hit by the puppet arrow. These abilities are extremely powerful, but they all have huge flaws. They require the help of others, and if they have a strong partner, their abilities will exponentially double. But when they are often fighting alone, they will have obvious flaws. That is why Yang Xinxin has always been one of Zhang Yi's trump cards. Her arrows don't hit the target easily, but she is extremely clever and doesn't need Zhang Yi to worry about it. She will find a way to maximize her abilities in battle. This feeling of walking a tightrope often makes her very excited. After Zhang Yi returned, he locked himself in the bedroom first. Then he took out the jar that sealed Plato's origin. From the transparent jar, a pure white and flawless radiance was projected, the purest energy. This was not the source of God, but the origin of the mutants that Zhang Yi was accustomed to seeing. Plato's was different from the artificial human demon god machine he had seen before, because he retained a large number of characteristics of his own as a living organism. Zhang Yi opened the jar and absorbed this power into his body. The feeling of that surging energy sweeping through his body and eventually converging in his brain was intoxicating. The absorption was quick, but it took time to slowly transform it into his own energy. Zhang Yi opened the bedroom door lock and walked out. Deng Shintong and the others were waiting for him outside. After seeing Zhang Yi, Deng Shintong smiled and said, "We have news from home."